The rain was pounding against the windows of our cozy suburban house in that relentless way it does in early fall, turning the world outside into a blurry watercolor of grays and muted greens, while inside, the kitchen smelled of fresh brewed coffee and the faint vanilla from the candle I'd lit to chase away the chill. It was supposed to be a simple evening, Jake coming over after his shift at the marketing firm, me prepping a quick pasta dinner with the kids' homework scattered on the dining table, my 10-year-old niece Lily, who I'd been helping with math since my sister was out of town, her pencils rolling forgotten as she giggled at some cartoon on her tablet. But as I stepped into the living room to grab my phone charger, the scene unfolded like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. My mother, Eleanor, whom I'd invited over earlier to discuss wedding plans because she insisted on being involved, her hands tangled in Jake's hair, their bodies pressed together on the couch where we'd binge-watched Netflix just last weekend, his shirt half unbuttoned, her lipstick smudged across his jaw, and the betrayal hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs as I dropped the charger with a clatter that finally made them spring apart, Jake's eyes widening in horror, muttering, "Oh, God, no," while Mom smoothed her blouse, her face flushing not with shame, but with a defiant flicker that twisted the knife deeper. I stood there, frozen, the world narrowing to the pounding in my ears, memories flashing unbidden, her constant criticisms of Jake during our engagement, calling him too slick over Sunday brunches, yet here she was, entwined with him, the man I'd planned to marry in 6 months, the one who'd promised forever during that rainy proposal in the park last year. How long had this been going on, I wondered, my mind racing through texts I'd seen him hide, late nights at work, her sudden interest in dropping by unannounced, and the pain surged, raw and unrelenting, making my voice crack as I whispered, "What the hell is this?" But it came out louder, sharper, echoing in the sudden silence broken only by the rain's tattoo on the roof. Jake stammered excuses. "It just happened. We didn't mean..." But I cut him off, turning to Mom, the woman who'd raised me through my father's abandonment when I was 12, the one who'd taught me about trust and family over endless cups of tea and therapy sessions after her own divorce, her eyes now avoiding mine, murmuring, "Sweetheart, let's talk about this calmly," as if this were a minor disagreement over holiday plans, not the shattering of my world. And I felt the anger boil over, hot tears streaming as I yelled, "Calmly? You've been sleeping with my fiancé!" The words tasting like bile. And Lily peeked in from the kitchen, her wide eyes confused, forcing me to swallow the scream building in my throat, ushering her back with a shaky, "Go finish your homework, sweetie," while inside, grief clawed at me, the realization that this wasn't just about Jake's infidelity, but my own mother's betrayal, the person who'd bandaged my knees and cheered at my graduations, now the architect of this agony. Jake grabbed his coat, mumbling apologies. "I love you, this was a mistake," but I shoved him toward the door, the rain soaking him as he stumbled out, his car lights cutting through the downpour like accusations. And then it was just Mom and me, the air thick with unspoken history. Her loneliness since Dad left, her subtle jealousy of my happiness that I'd dismissed as overprotectiveness, but now it all clicked into a horrifying puzzle. Her saying, "He came on to me, I was weak," but I saw the lie in her averted gaze, the way she'd always flirted at family gatherings, and the pain deepened, layering guilt on top because part of me wondered if I'd ignored signs, if my busy life with work at the graphic design studio and planning the wedding had blinded me. I told her to leave, my voice breaking. "Get out, Mom, just go." And she hesitated, reaching for me. "Please, let's not do this." But I pulled away, the touch burning like betrayal, watching her gather her purse with trembling hands, the door clicking shut behind her, leaving me alone in the echoing house, collapsing onto the couch that still held the warmth of their bodies, sobs racking me as Lily crept back in, hugging me silently, her small arms a fragile anchor in the storm of hurt. And I held her, whispering, "It's okay," even as my mind spiraled into the abyss of what-ifs, the immediate fallout crashing over me like waves, the wedding deposits lost, friends to notify, but mostly the hollow ache where trust had been, wondering how a mother could do this to a child, the raw wound pulsing with every heartbeat, the rain outside mirroring the torrent inside, no end in sight to the grief that threatened to drown me whole. As the night wore on, I paced the living room, ignoring Jake's frantic texts, begging to explain, deleting them one by one, the screen blurring through tears. And when Mom called, her voicemail pleading, "Call me back, we need to talk," I hit delete, the action final, yet unsatisfying, the pain too fresh to process, guilt creeping in for Lily witnessing it all, for not protecting her from this family fracture, and I tucked her into the guest bed with stories of happier times, her questions about, "Why was Grandma kissing Uncle Jake?" stabbing anew, forcing me to lie, "Grown-up stuff, honey," while inside, the betrayal replayed in loops, each detail sharper, the intimacy I'd shared with both now tainted, Jake's proposal ring heavy on my finger, until I yanked it off, tossing it into a drawer like poison. The house feeling colder, emptier, as I finally crawled into bed alone, the sheets unfamiliar without him, but the real void was the shattered bond with Mom, the woman who'd been my rock, now the source of my deepest wound. And sleep evaded me, thoughts churning through anger and sorrow, the fallout just beginning, a chasm opening in my life that no amount of coffee or therapy could bridge overnight. leaving me raw, exposed, questioning everything I'd ever believed about love and family in the quiet hours before dawn. The house felt unnaturally quiet after Mom left, and Jake drove off into the rain. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and makes every small sound. The drip of the kitchen faucet I'd been meaning to fix, the low hum of the refrigerator, Lily's soft breathing from the guest room where she'd finally fallen asleep after I read her 3 extra chapters, feel amplified and accusing. I sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for 2 years, still wearing the same jeans and sweater from dinner prep, the fabric clinging damply from where I'd pressed against the wet window watching Mom's taillights disappear down the street, and the ringless finger on my left hand throbbed like a fresh bruise, the skin paler where the diamond had sat for 13 months. I couldn't bring myself to change the sheets yet. They smelled faintly of Jake's cologne mixed with the lavender detergent I always used, and beneath that, something muskier that I now recognize as betrayal. So I stripped the comforter instead and curled up on top in the fetal position, phone clutched in one hand like a lifeline I no longer trusted, notifications piling up, Jake's repeated, "Please pick up, I'm so sorry, it was only a few times, I swear," Mom's single long voicemail I hadn't listened to yet, friends asking about wedding cake tastings tomorrow that now felt like cruel jokes from another lifetime. The grief came in waves, first hot and furious, fists clenched into the pillow until my nails left crescents in my palms, then cold and hollow, leaving me staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles, wondering how many nights they'd lain here together while I was at late client meetings or picking up Lily from soccer practice, how many times I'd kissed him goodnight, oblivious to the lipstick traces I'd mistaken for chapped lips. Around 2 a.m., I finally played Mom's message, her voice thin and cracked through the speaker. "Darling, I know you hate me right now, and I don't blame you, but please believe it wasn't planned. He was here helping me with the printer for your save the dates. We had wine. I was lonely. I'm so ashamed." And I hit delete before she finished, the shame in her tone only making the hurt sharper because it sounded rehearsed, like the apologies she'd given after every fight with Dad before he walked out for good, always the victim of circumstance rather than choice. I thought about calling my best friend Mara, the one who'd planned my bachelorette weekend and cried happy tears when Jake proposed, but the humiliation stopped me. How do you say "my mother seduced my fiancé" without hearing the pity, without it becoming the story everyone whispers about at the office coffee station? Instead, I texted her a vague, "Something happened, need space, talk soon," then turned the phone face down on the nightstand, the screen lighting up every few minutes with more apologies I refused to read. Sleep came in fragments, haunted by flashes of their bodies on the couch, Mom's hand on his chest the way she used to smooth my hair when I was sick, Jake's laugh that I'd once loved now echoing as mockery. I woke at dawn, slick with sweat, throat raw from silent crying, and the first coherent thought was practical, almost cruel in its detachment. Cancel the venue deposit by Monday, tell the florist no, explain to Lily why Uncle Jake won't be coming to her school play next month, and the weight of those tasks pressed down harder than the emotional wreckage because they made the destruction real, irrevocable. I dragged myself to the kitchen, brewed coffee out of habit, the machine gurgling like it did every morning when Jake would wrap his arms around me from behind and kiss my neck, and the memory stabbed so fiercely I almost dropped the mug. Instead, I carried it to the table, sat staring at the wedding binder I'd left open last night, color swatches, seating charts, Mom's handwritten notes in the margins about centerpieces, and I flipped through it slowly, each page a fresh wound, until tears blurred the ink and I slammed it shut, shoving it into a drawer with the force of someone trying to bury evidence. Lily padded in around 7, still in pajamas, hair tangled, asking quietly, "Is Grandma coming back today?" And I pulled her onto my lap, burying my face in her hair that smelled like strawberry shampoo, murmuring, "Not today, honey. She's busy." The lie tasting sour because I didn't know how to explain that the woman who taught her to braid friendship bracelets had just torn my heart out. We ate cereal in silence, the spoons clinking against bowls the only sound, and when she asked if Jake was sick, I said, something like that, hating how easily the half-truths came, how quickly I was learning to protect her the way I wished someone had protected me. After dropping her at school, driving on autopilot, radio off, eyes burning from lack of sleep, I came home to an empty house that felt too big, too echoey, and finally allowed myself to scream into a pillow until my throat ached. The release temporary, but necessary, because the rage needed somewhere to go before it consumed me entirely. I spent the afternoon on the couch in yesterday's clothes, scrolling through old photos, engagement party, Mom beaming beside us, Jake's arm around my waist, her hand on his shoulder in what I'd thought was maternal affection, and each one felt like a lie now, the happiness staged, the love conditional. I deleted them one by one, the little trash can icon a small, vicious satisfaction, until the album was gutted, and I was left staring at blank squares where joy used to live. When the sun dipped low, painting the living room orange, I texted Jake a single line. "Don't come here again," and blocked his number, the action final in a way nothing else had been, then sat with the phone in my lap, waiting for the tears that didn't come this time, only a bone-deep exhaustion and the dawning realization that tonight would be the first full night of truth. No more pretending everything was fixable with apologies or wine or time, just me alone in this house with the wreckage of two betrayals, one from the man I'd chosen and one from the woman who'd chosen to raise me, and the quiet terror that maybe I'd never trust anyone's love again, not even my own. The next morning arrived gray and sodden, the rain finally reduced to a persistent drizzle that tapped irregularly against the gutters like hesitant fingers, and I woke with the kind of headache that comes from crying until your sinuses burn, eyes swollen enough that the bathroom mirror showed a stranger staring back. Lily was already up, quietly pouring cereal into a bowl she'd set out for me too, her small act of caretaking cracking something open in my chest, because at 10, she shouldn't have to be the one trying to hold things together. Yet here she was, spooning milk carefully so it wouldn't spill, asking in her softest voice if I wanted strawberries on mine. I managed to nod, sat across from her at the kitchen table where wedding invitations still lay half addressed in neat stacks, and we ate in near silence, broken only by the clink of spoons and the occasional slurp, her gaze flicking to me every few seconds as if checking for cracks. When she finally whispered, "Are you mad at Grandma forever?" the question landed like a stone in still water, rippling through the fragile calm I'd been clinging to, and I set my spoon down slowly, searching for words that wouldn't scar her more than the scene she'd already witnessed. "I'm hurt, sweetheart," I said, voice rough from disuse. "Really hurt, and it's going to take time to figure out how I feel about Grandma, but that doesn't mean you have to stop loving her, okay? You can still talk to her if you want." She nodded solemnly, though her eyes shimmered, and I reached across to squeeze her hand, feeling the small bones fragile under my fingers, a reminder that this fracture wasn't just mine to carry. She'd lost the easy rhythm of family visits too, the way Mom used to show up with library books and homemade cookies after school, now tainted by the memory of lips meeting where they shouldn't. After I dropped her at the bus stop, watching until the yellow doors closed and the bus pulled away, taillights winking through the mist, I came back inside and stared at my phone, Mom's number unblocked now because ignoring her felt childish when the wound was this deep, and I typed a single message. "Lily misses you. Come by after school if you want to see her. We need to talk first." Her reply came almost instantly. "I'll be there at 3:30. Thank you." And the gratitude in those 3 words felt like salt in the cut, because part of me wanted her to fight harder, to beg on her knees, while another part recoiled at the thought of seeing her face again so soon. The hours until then stretched elastic and painful. I tried to work, opening my laptop to client proofs that blurred on the screen, deleted emails without reading them, made tea I didn't drink, until the doorbell rang precisely at 3:30, and there she was on the porch, umbrella dripping, coat buttoned wrong in her haste, looking smaller than I remembered, cheeks hollowed, eyes red-rimmed in a way that mirrored mine. I let her in without a word, the door closing behind her with a soft click that sounded final, and we stood in the foyer, coat still on, the air between us thick with everything unsaid. She started to reach for me, then stopped, hands dropping to her sides, murmuring, "I didn't sleep either." And I nodded once, leading her to the living room where I'd already moved the couch cushions to the garage because I couldn't sit on them yet, the faint scent of her perfume still lingering like evidence I hadn't scrubbed away. We sat in the armchairs instead, facing each other across the coffee table littered with Lily's crayons and a half-finished drawing of a house with 3 stick figures holding hands, me, her, and the empty space where Jake used to be. And I spoke first, voice low and steady despite the tremor underneath. "This isn't just about him. It's about you choosing to cross that line knowing what it would do to me. You raised me to believe family protects each other, not this." She flinched, fingers twisting the strap of her purse, and when she answered, her words came careful, measured, like someone walking on broken glass. "I know. I've replayed it every second since you walked in. I was lonely, resentful of how easily you seemed to have everything I lost. And he listened, flirted, made me feel seen again. It was selfish and wrong, and I hate myself for it." The admission hung there, rawer than her voicemail, and I felt the anger flare hot, then ebb into something colder. Grief, maybe, for the mother I thought I knew. I told her the boundaries then, plain and unyielding. No more unannounced visits, no more helping with wedding things that no longer existed, phone calls only when Lily asked for them, and absolutely no contact with Jake ever again. She nodded to each one, tears slipping silently down her cheeks, not the dramatic sobs I half expected, but quiet, almost dignified, and when Lily's bus rumbled up outside, she stood quickly, wiping her face with her sleeve, asking, "Can I hug her goodbye?" I hesitated, the protective instinct roaring, but nodded, watching from the doorway as Lily ran up the walk, saw Mom, and paused, only a second, but long enough to show the confusion still there, before throwing herself into Mom's arms anyway, the embrace fierce and wordless, Mom burying her face in Lily's hair the way she used to with me after nightmares. They murmured to each other, too soft for me to hear, and when Lily pulled back, she looked at me with those big, questioning eyes, so I forced a small smile and said, "Grandma's gonna come by sometimes just to see you, okay?" Lily nodded relieved and scampered inside to drop her backpack, while Mom lingered at the threshold, looking at me with something like cautious hope mixed with terror. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly. "Not now, maybe not ever, but I'll wait as long as it takes to prove I'm still your mother, the one who loves you more than anything." I didn't answer. Couldn't. The words lodged somewhere between my heart and throat, so I just closed the door gently after she stepped back into the drizzle, watching through the sidelight as she walked to her car, shoulders hunched, umbrella forgotten in her hand until rain darkened her coat. Inside, Lily chattered about her day, art class, a new friend, the playground puddle she jumped in, and I listened, nodding, making the right sounds, while inside, the first faint boundary held, shaky but real, the initial painful talk over but far from finished, leaving me exhausted yet strangely steadier, as if naming the rules had given the chaos a shape I could begin to navigate, one careful step at a time. By Friday afternoon, the house had started to feel less like a crime scene and more like a place I was trying to reclaim, though every corner still held echoes. The faint ring mark on the coffee table from where Jake used to set his mug, the wedding binder now shoved to the back of the hall closet behind winter coats, Lily's drawing of our family now carefully folded and tucked into her nightstand drawer instead of taped to the fridge. I'd taken the week off work, citing a family emergency and a terse email to my boss, and spent the days in a haze of small, deliberate tasks, scrubbing baseboards until my knuckles bled, reorganizing the pantry by expiration date, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from replaying the betrayal on an endless loop. When the weekend arrived, I knew I couldn't stay here another minute breathing the same air that had witnessed it all. So I packed an overnight bag for Lily and me, told her we were going on a surprise adventure to Aunt Mara's cabin upstate, the one Mara inherited from her grandmother and rarely used except for long weekends. Mara answered my call on the second ring, voice bright until I said quietly, "I need somewhere to go, just for a couple days. Jake and Mom, it's bad." And without hesitation, she said, "Keys are under the blue flower pot by the back door. Stay as long as you need. I'll text you the Wi-Fi code." Her matter-of-fact kindness almost undoing me, because she didn't press for details, didn't offer platitudes, just gave me space, wrapped in practicality. We left Saturday morning before the sun fully rose, Lily buckled in the back with her tablet and a bag of goldfish crackers, asking excited questions about the lake and whether there'd be paddle boats, and I answered with half my attention, the other half fixed on the rearview mirror, watching the familiar streets recede until the highway opened up, wide and anonymous, the kind of road where you can pretend for a few hours that your life hasn't cracked open. The drive took 3 hours, rain giving way to patchy sun that turned the wet asphalt into a shimmering ribbon, and by the time we pulled up to the small cedar cabin nestled between pines, the air smelled of damp earth and pine needles, a sharp, clean scent that felt like permission to breathe deeper. Inside it was cool and musty, the way unused houses get, but Mara had left fresh linens on the beds and a note on the kitchen counter. "There's coffee in the freezer, wine under the sink if you need it, call if the hot water acts up. Love you." And I stood there, reading it twice, tears pricking because someone still cared without needing explanations. Lily ran straight to the back deck overlooking the small lake, squealing at the sight of a loon gliding across the water, and for the first time in days, I felt the knot in my chest loosen just enough to let air in. That first evening, we built a fire in the stone fireplace. Mara had left a neat stack of kindling, and roasted marshmallows from the pantry, the sticky sweetness clinging to our fingers as Lily told me about the science project she wanted to do on volcanoes, her voice bright and ordinary, and I listened, really listened, letting her chatter fill the quiet spaces where grief usually rushed in. Later, after she fell asleep in the loft bed with the quilt pulled to her chin, I sat on the deck wrapped in a borrowed fleece, phone in hand, staring at the dark water reflecting scattered stars. I told no one the full story yet, but the weight of carrying it alone was crushing. So I dialed Mara, the ring echoing into the night until she picked up, sleepy but alert. "Hey," I said. And then the words tumbled out in a rush. The couch, Mom's hands, Jake's excuses, the way Lily had seen too much. And Mara listened without interrupting, only breathing softly on the other end until I finished, voice hoarse. When I stopped, she said simply, "I'm so sorry. That's monstrous. No sugarcoating. No, maybe there's an explanation. Just acknowledgement that made the pain feel witnessed instead of invisible." We talked for almost an hour, mostly me unloading the anger and shame, her murmuring, "You didn't deserve that," at the right moments, and by the end, I felt lighter. Not healed, but unburdened enough to name what I needed next. Rules, transparency, distance until trust could even be considered. I'm thinking of changing my number, or at least blocking them both for a while. I need to see what life looks like without their voices in my head. She agreed it sounded like a start, suggested therapy when I was ready, not to fix them, just to help you carry it. And when we hung up, the night felt less oppressive, the lake's gentle lapping a steady rhythm under the words still settling inside me. Sunday, we hiked a short trail behind the cabin, Lily collecting pine cones and pointing out chipmunks, her small hand in mine warm and trusting. And as we walked, I let myself imagine boundaries as something solid instead of wishful. Phone calls only through a new app with read receipts off, no more shared calendars or group texts, mail forwarded if necessary, every layer a brick in the wall I was building to protect what remained of my heart. Driving home that evening, the sky turned bruised purple, headlights cutting through the dusk, and Lily slept in the back, cheek pressed to the window. I kept the radio low, some soft acoustic station playing songs about leaving and coming back changed, and for the first time, the future didn't feel entirely like wreckage. When we pulled up to our driveway, the house looked smaller somehow, less haunted, and I carried Lily inside, tucked her into bed with a kiss on her forehead, then sat at the kitchen table with a fresh mug of tea, opened my phone settings, and blocked Jake's number completely. No message, no explanation, just gone. Mom's I left unblocked, but muted, a compromise for Lily's sake, though I wasn't ready to hear her voice yet. The acts felt small, almost insignificant against the size of the hurt, but they were mine, deliberate choices in a week that had stripped me of so much agency. And as I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, sheets finally changed, the room smelling only of clean laundry now, I allowed myself the tiniest flicker of something like resolve. I would decide who got access to me, how close they could come, and on what terms. The weekend hadn't erased the pain, hadn't magically rebuilt trust, but it had given me space to decide the rules of engagement, a map for navigating the long road back to whatever version of family might still be possible, one careful, hard-won boundary at a time. Monday morning came with a brittle clarity, the kind of autumn light that slices through half-drawn blinds and makes dust motes look like tiny accusations floating in the air. I woke before the alarm, body heavy with the residue of weekend exhaustion, yet strangely alert, as if the cabin had siphoned off just enough grief to leave room for something else. Resolve, maybe, or at least the decision to stop waiting for the pain to decide my next move. Lily was still asleep, curled around her stuffed otter, so I slipped downstairs in socks, made coffee in the quiet kitchen where the wedding binder no longer haunted the counter, and sat at the table with my laptop open to a blank search page, fingers hovering before I typed, therapists near me, individual counseling, infidelity, family betrayal. The results spilled out in neat blue links, Psychology Today profiles, sliding scales, virtual options, and I scrolled slowly, reading bios the way I used to read a restaurant reviews before dates with Jake, looking for someone who sounded steady, non-judgmental, experienced with complicated grief rather than tidy breakups. I booked the first appointment that felt right. Dr. Elena Marquez, 40-something from her photo, warm brown eyes behind glasses, specializing in attachment wounds and intergenerational trauma. First session virtual tomorrow at 10 a.m. while Lily was at school. The confirmation email arrived instantly with a link and intake forms, and filling them out felt like the smallest act of agency I'd managed in weeks. Checking boxes for anxiety, depression, relational distress, writing in the open field, my mother had an affair with my fiancé. I need help processing the double betrayal without losing myself or my niece. Sending it was terrifying and relieving at once, like lancing something that had been swelling too long. The rest of the day passed in ordinary rhythms that now felt almost defiant. School drop-off with a quick wave to the crossing guard, grocery run for ingredients I actually planned to cook instead of takeout, answering a few client emails with apologies for the delay and promises of proofs by Wednesday. Each task anchored me, reminded me that life continued even when my heart felt like it had stopped. That evening, after Lily's bath and bedtime story, her choosing the one about the brave fox who finds her way home, I sat on the couch with my phone, thumbs scrolling through contacts until I landed on Mara again. I texted instead of calling, needing the buffer of words on a screen. Booked my first therapy session tomorrow. Feels huge and scary. Thanks for listening the other night. Her reply came fast. Proud of you. That's not small. Text me after if you want to debrief. Here whenever. The simplicity of it steadied me more than any pep talk could have. The next morning, after waving Lily off to the bus with her backpack bouncing, I set up in the spare bedroom I'd turned into a makeshift office, laptop on the desk, glass of water, tissues within reach, door closed against the empty house, and when the video window popped up, Dr. Marquez was already there, smiling gently, background a soft bookshelf and plants. She started with easy questions, how the week had been, what brought me in, and I answered haltingly at first, then in a rush once the dam cracked. The discovery, the confrontation, Mom's excuses, Jake's disappearance from my life, Lily's confusion, the way every memory of family felt rewritten now. She listened without filling silences, nodding when I paused, asking gentle probes. What does that betrayal feel like in your body right now? When you picture your mother, what's the first emotion that surfaces? And I described the hollow ache under my ribs, the flash of rage mixed with childish longing for her to make it right like she used to when I skinned my knee. Toward the end, she suggested small experiments in vulnerability, not with them yet, but with safe people. Try sharing one honest feeling a day with someone who hasn't hurt you. Mara, perhaps, or even Lily in age-appropriate ways. It rebuilds the muscle of trust, starting with yourself. I left the session drained, but oddly lighter, as if I'd carried a suitcase of stones into the room and left half of them behind. That afternoon, I picked Lily up from after-school art club, her hands still faintly blue from watercolor, and on the drive home, I tried the experiment. Hey, kiddo, you know how sometimes grown-ups feel really sad and it makes them quiet? She nodded, watching me in the rearview. I've been really sad lately because of some grown-up stuff with Grandma and Uncle Jake, but talking to a helper today made me feel a tiny bit better, like when you tell me about a bad dream and then it's not so scary. She thought for a second, then said, I'm glad you talked to someone. I don't like when you're sad alone. The words landed soft but deep, and I swallowed hard, blinking against sudden moisture. Later, after dinner, spaghetti with hidden zucchini because she still pretended not to notice, I texted Mom for the first time since the boundary talk. I started individual therapy. Not ready to talk yet, but wanted you to know I'm working on this. Lily can call you tomorrow if she wants. Her response took 20 minutes. Thank you for telling me. I'm seeing someone too. Take all the time you need. I love you both. No pleading, no flood of explanations, just quiet acceptance that felt almost like respect, and I let the phone rest on the counter without replying, the small vulnerability of sending that message settling like a pebble in still water, ripples spreading outwards without capsizing me. The rest of the day passed in careful increments, another therapy session where I cried for the first time out loud about missing the mother I thought I had, a walk with Lily after school where she slipped her hand in mine and said nothing, just walked, her presence a wordless tether. I began journaling at night, not the polished kind, just bullet points of what hurt today, what felt okay, what I was grateful for, even if it was only hot coffee and clean sheets. And each entry chipped away at the isolation. By Friday, I noticed tiny shifts. I laughed at one of Lily's terrible puns without forcing it, answered a work call without my voice cracking, slept through the night once without waking to replay the scene on the couch. The acts were small, reaching out to a therapist, sharing a sliver of truth with my niece, informing Mom without inviting her in fully, but they accumulated like deposits in an account that had been dangerously overdrawn, building the faintest cushion of self-trust. I wasn't ready to forgive, wasn't even close to letting either of them back into the inner rooms of my life, but I was beginning to believe I could survive the distance, maybe even grow something new in the space it created, one tentative, honest step at a time. The waiting room of Dr. Marquez's office smelled faintly of bergamot from the diffuser on the side table and the clean linen scent of freshly washed throw pillows. A small space designed to feel safe rather than sterile, with abstract watercolors on the walls and a low bookshelf holding titles like The Body Keeps the Score and books on rebuilding after betrayal. I arrived 10 minutes early for our first joint session, Mom and me, no Jake because I'd made it clear he was no longer part of any equation, and sat with my hands clasped between my knees, heart thudding in the deliberate rhythm it had adopted whenever anticipation mixed with dread. Dr. Marquez had suggested this step after 4 individual sessions where I'd slowly unpacked the layers. The childhood abandonment by Dad that made Mom's betrayal feel like an echo, the way I'd always tried to be the easy daughter so she wouldn't leave too, the guilt that still whispered, I should have seen it coming. She'd asked if I was ready to hear Mom's side without it becoming an excuse, and after a week of journaling angry what-ifs, I'd said yes. Not forgiveness, just listening, because the silence between us was starting to feel heavier than the pain itself. Mom arrived exactly on time, coat folded over her arm, hair pulled back in the neat low bun she wore when she was nervous, eyes meeting mine for half a second before dropping to the floor. She murmured, "Thank you for this," as she sat 2 chairs away, close enough to feel present, far enough to honor the space I still needed, and we waited in thick quiet until Dr. Marquez opened the door, smiled gently, and invited us in. The therapy room was warmer, sunlight slanting through half-closed blinds onto a circle of 4 chairs, though only 3 were occupied. She began by setting ground rules in her calm, even voice. No interrupting, no fixing, speak from I feel statements, take breaks if needed, and then turn to me first. Why don't you start by sharing what brought you here today, what you hope might come from this hour? I took a breath that felt too shallow, then spoke slowly, words I'd rehearsed in the car. I'm here because I miss my mother, the one who used to make pancakes on snow days and sit with me through panic attacks in college. But right now, all I can see is the woman who chose my fiancé over our relationship. I feel betrayed on a level I didn't know was possible, and I'm terrified that if I let you back in even a little, I'll lose the part of me that's finally starting to feel safe again. My voice cracked on the last word, but I didn't stop, letting the honesty sit there raw between us. Mom listened without fidgeting, tears already tracking silently down her cheeks, and when Dr. Marquez nodded to her, she wiped her face with the back of her hand before speaking. I came because I love my daughter more than I've ever loved anything, and I destroyed that with the most selfish choice I've ever made. I was lonely after your father left, watching you build a life that looked perfect from the outside, and Jake, he paid attention when I felt invisible. It wasn't about wanting him, it was about wanting to feel wanted again, and I let that hunger override every boundary I ever taught you. I'm ashamed every waking minute, and I don't expect you to erase that or pretend it didn't happen. I just want the chance to show, not tell, that I can be better, that I'm already trying to be. Her voice stayed steady even as fresh tears fell, and hearing her name the deeper issue, loneliness, envy, the midlife ache I'd glimpsed but never fully understood, shifted something in me, not softening the hurt but giving it context, making it less like a random cruelty and more like a wound she'd inflicted on both of us. Dr. Marquez guided us through the next part carefully, naming the specific impacts. I listed them without sugarcoating. The canceled wedding, the trust I no longer extended to anyone easily, the way Lily now asked careful questions about family, the nights I still woke convinced everyone would eventually leave. Mom listened, nodding, occasionally whispering, "I'm so sorry," when a particular detail landed hard. Then she shared her own fallout. Therapy twice a week, sleeplessness, the ache of missing Lily's soccer games she hadn't dared ask to attend, the mirror she avoided because she hated the person looking back. The exchange felt exhausting, like peeling layers of scar tissue, but there were no raised voices, no accusations that spiraled. Just truth, laid out plainly, witnessed by someone trained to hold it without flinching. Toward the end, Dr. Marquez asked if we were ready for a small physical step, sitting closer, perhaps, or a brief touch if it felt safe, and after a long pause, I scooted my chair nearer, close enough that our knees almost brushed. Mom looked at me with tentative hope, and I extended my hand, palm up, on the armrest between us. She hesitated, then placed hers lightly over mine, fingers trembling but warm, no pressure, just contact. The touch burned at first, memories of her hugging me after bad days, now overlaid with the image of her fingers in Jake's hair, but I didn't pull away. I let the sensation exist, let the tears come quietly, and for the first time since the discovery, I felt the faintest bridge forming, not strutty yet, more like a rope thrown across the chasm, thin and fraying, but there. When the session ended, we stood at the same time, and Dr. Marquez suggested homework, one short, honest text exchange per week, no more, and a check-in session in 2 weeks. Mom walked me to my car afterward. Rain had started again, soft and steady, and before I got in, she said quietly, "I'll wait however it takes, even if it's forever." I nodded, throat too tight for words, and drove home through the wet streets, windshield wipers keeping time with my heartbeat. That evening, Lily asked if Grandma could come to her school play next month, just to watch, not sit with us if you don't want, and I surprised myself by saying, "We'll see." Not a yes, but not a no, a crack in the door I'd kept bolted. Later, I sent Mom the first text since the cabin. "Session was hard, but necessary. Lily wants you at her play. I'm thinking about it." Her reply came after 10 minutes. "Thank you. I'll be there if you decide yes, in the back row, no pressure." I set the phone down, made tea, sat on the couch, new throw pillows I'd bought to replace the old ones, and let the small steps settle. The shared hour, the hand held briefly, the tentative contact that didn't fix anything, but proved we could be in the same room without the world ending. It wasn't closeness yet, not even forgiveness, just the beginning of possibility, fragile and hard-earned, a quiet acknowledgement that maybe, slowly, we could learn to carry the scar together instead of letting it keep us apart forever. The school auditorium smelled of old velvet curtains and floor wax the night of Lily's spring play, a modest production of The Wizard of Oz, where she'd landed the part of a munchkin with 3 lines and a solo dance step that made her practice in the living room for weeks. I sat in the 3rd row center, the seat I'd claimed early to save spots, heart thudding harder than it should for a children's theater event, because tonight wasn't just about watching Lily skip across the stage in green felt. It was the first time Mom would be in the same room with us since the joint session 3 weeks ago, a test I'd agreed to after another therapy hour, where Dr. Marquez gently asked if small structured exposures might help desensitize the trigger of seeing her face. I'd said yes, cautiously, setting the terms myself. Mom would arrive separately, sit in the back row as promised, leave immediately after curtain call without lingering in the lobby. No photos together, no forced conversation beyond a quick good job to Lily if she approached. Lily had been the one to push for it, her small voice earnest over breakfast one morning. "I want Grandma to see me be brave like Dorothy." And hearing her use that word, brave, cracked open something protective in me. I couldn't deny her the chance to feel seen by the grandmother who'd once cheered every cartwheel and finger-painting masterpiece, even if allowing it meant risking my own composure. The lights dimmed at 7 sharp, the overture starting tinny through old speakers, and I scanned the back rows until I spotted Mom near the aisle, dark coat draped over her lap, posture straight but hands clasped tight, eyes already fixed on the stage as if willing herself invisible. When Lily appeared in the first scene, tiny in her costume, waving to the crowd with exaggerated enthusiasm, I felt Mom's gaze shift to me for a split second, a silent question. "Okay?" And I gave the barest nod, the smallest acknowledgement that I knew she was there, that I hadn't changed my mind. The play unfolded in charming chaos, forgotten lines covered with giggles, a wobbly cyclone made of fans and crepe paper, Lily delivering her lines clear and bright, "Follow the yellow brick road," her solo a simple twirl that earned real applause, not pity claps. I filmed on my phone for the memories I'd promised her, but halfway through I caught myself glancing back at Mom again. She was crying quietly, not dramatic sobs, but steady tears she wiped away with her sleeve, lips moving in silent repetition of Lily's lines like she'd memorized them from the script Lily had brought over during one supervised visit. Seeing her like that, raw, unguarded, proud in the dim light, stirred something complicated in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition. This was still the woman who'd stayed up sewing Halloween costumes, who'd driven through blizzards for my dance recitals. The same tenderness now directed at Lily, untainted by what she'd done to me. After the final bow, lights up, the auditorium filled with chatter and folding chairs scraping. Lily bounded off stage straight to me, face flushed, hugging my legs so hard I almost lost balance. "Did you see my spin? I didn't fall," she crowed, and I knelt to kiss her forehead, murmuring, "You were perfect, Munchkin," while keeping one eye on the exit where parents milled. Mom waited until the crowd thinned, then approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. Lily spotted her and lit up, tugging my hand. "Grandma!" And before I could decide, she ran forward, throwing herself into Mom's arms. Mom hugged her back fiercely but briefly, whispering something that made Lily giggle, then looked up over Lily's head, eyes shining. "She was wonderful," she said simply, voice thick. "Thank you for letting me come." I swallowed, the words I'd rehearsed evaporating, and managed only, "She wanted you here." Lily pulled back, looking between us with that uncanny child wisdom, then said, "Can we all go for ice cream, like before?" The question hung fragile in the air, a bridge I hadn't built yet, and I felt the old panic rise. Too soon, too much. But then I remembered Dr. Marquez's words about incremental risks, how healing sometimes looked like saying yes to one small thing. "Okay," I said, surprising myself. "Just ice cream, quick stop." We drove separately, Mom following in her car, to the little parlor 2 blocks from school, the one with cracked vinyl booths and 24 flavors behind glass. Lily chose mint chip with rainbow sprinkles, chattering nonstop about the play, while Mom and I sat across from each other, knees careful not to touch under the table, spoons moving slowly through melting scoops. Conversation stayed surface. Lily's upcoming field trip, the new art teacher, safe topics that let us exist in the same space without touching the wound. At one point, Lily excused herself to the bathroom. "I gotta wash the green off my hands." And silence settled, heavier now without her buffer. Mom spoke first, quiet enough that I had to lean in. "I know this doesn't fix anything. I'm not asking it to. But sitting here, watching her, being allowed even this much, it means more than I can say." I looked at her, really looked, and saw the lines deeper around her eyes, the gray threading her hair that she hadn't bothered to dye lately, the way her hands trembled slightly around her cup. "I'm not ready to pretend it never happened," I said, voice low, "but I'm trying not to let it erase everything else either, for her sake mostly. Maybe for mine too." She nodded, tears welling again but not falling, and when Lily returned, we finished our cones in companionable quiet, the bell over the door jingling as other families left, the night outside cool and star-pricked. In the parking lot, Mom hugged Lily goodbye, longer this time, lingering, and then turned to me, not reaching out, just standing there with open palms. "Thank you, for the ice cream, for tonight." I met her eyes, held the gaze a beat longer than I thought I could, and said, "Drive safe." She nodded, got in her car, and pulled away slowly, taillights fading into the dark, while Lily and I stood watching until they disappeared. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back, cheek against the window, and I kept the radio off, letting the hum of tires and her soft breathing fill the space. The evening hadn't healed the rift. Forgiveness still felt distant, a horizon I couldn't quite reach. But it had tested us, and we hadn't shattered. We'd sat together, shared something ordinary and sweet, let Lily feel held by both of us at once. Back home, I carried Lily inside, tucked her in with her costume still half on, then stood in the doorway watching her sleep, the ache in my chest softer now, less sharp-edged. I texted Mom a single line before turning off the lights. She fell asleep smiling. "Good night." Her reply came almost immediately. "Me too. Good night, sweetheart." I set the phone down, crawled into bed, and for the first time in months, sleep came without replaying betrayal. Instead, I thought of green felt and mint chip, of a small hand reaching across tables, and allowed myself to feel the quiet, tentative warmth of what might be starting to mend. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to believe the next step wouldn't break me. 1 year to the day since the rain-soaked evening when I walked into the living room and watched my world fracture on the couch where we used to watch Sunday movies. I stood in the same kitchen, now smelling of cinnamon from the apple crisp cooling on the counter, sunlight slanting through the window in late afternoon gold that made the room feel warmer, less haunted. The house had changed in small, deliberate ways over the months. New throw pillows in soft gray because the old ones carried too many ghosts. A fresh coat of pale blue on the living room walls that Lily picked out during a weekend trip to the hardware store. The wedding binder long since recycled into scrap paper for her art projects. Jake's half of the closet emptied and filled instead with bins of winter clothes and a few framed photos of just the 3 of us. Me, Lily, Mom. Taken last summer at the lake cabin we rented together for a week. I'd woken early that morning with the familiar tightness in my chest, the anniversary arriving quiet but insistent, like an old bruise you press to see if it still hurts. It did, a dull ache rather than the sharp stab it once was, and I let myself sit with it over coffee, remembering the exact texture of the betrayal, the lipstick on his jaw, Mom's hands in his hair, the way my knees buckled, but also remembering the year that followed, therapy sessions where I learned to name the grief without letting it name me, evenings when Lily crawled into bed with me after nightmares about grown-up fighting, slow text exchanges with Mom that started with logistics. Lily has a dentist at 3:30 Thursday, and gradually included small offerings. Saw this recipe for lemon bars, thought of you. Joint sessions that grew from once a month to every 6 weeks, each one peeling back another layer until the wounds stopped bleeding quite so freely. Mom had moved into a smaller apartment downtown last fall, closer to her new part-time job at the library, where she shelved books and read to preschoolers. A quiet life she described in careful detail during our phone calls, never pushing for more, always waiting for me to set the pace. We'd spent Thanksgiving together at Mara's, just the four of us plus Mara's dog, eating turkey and passing dishes without forced cheer, conversation flowing around safe topics until Lily asked Mom to tell the story of how she used to sneak cookies to me when I was supposed to be asleep. And we'd both laughed. Real laughter that surprised us both. The sound fragile but genuine in the candlelit dining room. Christmas came next. Quieter still. Mom brought gifts wrapped in plain brown paper tied with twine, stayed for hot cocoa and carols on the couch, new couch, and left before it got too late, hugging Lily extra long, hugging me briefly when I didn't pull away. By spring, we'd managed a family weekend at the cabin again. No Jake-shaped absence this time because the space he'd occupied had slowly filled with other things. Lily's laughter echoing off the water, Mom teaching her to skip stones, me watching from the dock with a book I barely read because observing them felt like medicine. Forgiveness hadn't arrived as a thunderclap or a tearful declaration. It crept in through repetition, through showing up consistently on the terms we'd both agreed to, through Mom's unwavering patience when I still sometimes canceled plans last minute because a memory surfaced and stole my breath, through my own willingness to say, I'm still angry sometimes, and that's okay, without it ending the conversation. Today, the anniversary, I'd invited her over for dinner. Nothing elaborate, just roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the apple crisp she used to make when I had the flu as a kid. And she arrived at 5:30 with a small bouquet of sunflowers because she remembered they were my favorite. Handed them over with a soft, happy not anniversary, the phrase we'd started using half-jokingly to mark the date without letting it own us. Lily greeted her with a running hug, chattering about the science fair project she'd just finished on solar ovens, pulling Mom to the dining table to show diagrams spread across it. I watched from the kitchen doorway, drying my hands on a dish towel, feeling the old reflex to guard myself, but choosing instead to let the scene exist. My daughter and my mother, bent over construction paper, heads close, voices overlapping in easy rhythm. Dinner passed in ordinary comfort, passing the gravy, teasing Lily about her fear of carrots, Mom asking about my latest freelance client without prying into my personal life unless I opened the door first. After dessert, we moved to the living room, Lily sprawled on the rug with a sketch pad, while Mom and I sat on opposite ends of the couch, mugs of tea steaming between us. Silence settled, not tense, but thoughtful, and after a while I spoke, voice low enough that Lily didn't look up. A year ago, I didn't think I'd ever sit here with you again. Not like this. She nodded slowly, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. I know, I still wake up some mornings expecting you to hate me forever. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the woman who'd carried me through my father's leaving, through my own mistakes and heartbreaks, the same woman who'd broken me worst of all. I don't hate you, I said, the words steady. I forgave you a while back, not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to the anger was costing me more than it was costing you. I still have days when it stings, when I see you hug Lily and remember what you took from me, but I don't want to lose any more time. Not with her, not with you. Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet ones she didn't try to hide, and she reached across the cushion, palm up. I placed my hand in hers, fingers lacing naturally now, no hesitation, the touch familiar again instead of foreign. We sat like that for a long minute, Lily humming softly as she colored, the clock ticking on the mantel, the house breathing around us like it had finally exhaled. When she left later, hugging Lily at the door, then turning to me with a small, real smile, she said, "Thank you for today, for all of it." I nodded, stepped forward, and hugged her first, brief but firm, feeling her shoulders relax against mine the way they used to when I was small and the world felt too big. After her car disappeared down the street, I closed the door, locked it softly, and went back to the living room where Lily was gathering her crayons. "Grandma's coming to my birthday next month, right?" she asked, hopeful. "Yeah," I said, ruffling her hair. "She is." We cleaned up together, loaded the dishwasher, turned off lights room by room until the house settled into night quiet. Later, in bed with the window cracked to let in cool air that smelled faintly of coming rain, I thought about the scar that still ran through the center of us, visible if you knew where to look, raised and tender in places, but no longer bleeding, no longer defining every interaction. The bond wasn't the same as before. It never would be. It was stronger in different ways. Tested, chosen, rebuilt one honest conversation, one shared laugh, one held hand at a time. I turned off the lamp, pulled the quilt higher, and let sleep come easy, knowing tomorrow would bring ordinary things. School drop-off, client calls, maybe a text from Mom saying good morning, and those small continuities were the real miracle, the quiet proof that love, when it survives betrayal, doesn't always look perfect, but it can still look like home.